The sound comes first, low, rhythmic, almost like the heartbeat of the earth. Then the chanting begins, deep voices rising and falling in waves, feet striking the ground in perfect unison. Dust spirals upward as warriors, their faces streaked with paint, begin to move. They leap, shout, stamp, and sway, their bodies telling a story of power, defiance, and destiny. This is not just a dance. It is an invocation, a declaration, and perhaps even a farewell. Across centuries and continents, before every great battle, men have danced on the edge of life and death. But to the outsider, it might seem madness. Why would anyone dance before facing spears, bullets, or blades? Yet for those who lived by the sword, the act carried immense meaning. It was not merely performance, it was transformation. The dance was a bridge between the mortal and the divine, a way to step out of fear and into something greater. In that circle of dust and drumbeat, warriors became more than men. They became symbols of their people, vessels of their gods, living weapons of rhythm and rage. Among the Maori of New Zealand, the haka was the thunder before the storm. Warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, their chests pounding, their eyes wide with fury, tongues thrust out in challenge. Every gesture was deliberate, a stomp to awaken the land, a shout to summon ancestors, a grimace to unnerve the foe. The haka was not only a performance for the enemy, it was a ritual of unity. In those final moments before battle, the warriors fused into one heartbeat. Fear was expelled through movement, replaced by the shared certainty that whatever happened next, they would face it together. Thousands of miles away, on the plains of Africa, the Zulu impi prepared for war in much the same spirit. Their battle dances, accompanied by drumming, chanting, and the rattle of spears, were both psychological and spiritual warfare. Each movement rehearsed the rhythm of killing and survival. To outsiders, it looked like chaos, but to those inside the circle, it was precision, a rehearsal of courage, a ritual sharpening of the soul. British soldiers who faced the Zulu at Isandlwana wrote later of the haunting sound that preceded the attack, a chant that seemed to rise from the ground itself. They called it terrifying. The Zulu called it power. In the north, among the Norse, warriors known as berserkers also danced before battle. They swayed and howled, entering what chroniclers described as a trance or possession. Some claimed they became beasts, half man, half fury, impervious to pain. Modern scholars suggest that rhythm, breath, and adrenaline could indeed induce altered states, granting temporary strength and fearlessness. But for the Norse, it was more than psychology. It was spiritual transformation. They believed Odin himself possessed them in those moments, filling their bodies with divine rage. The dance, the howl, the ritual, they were keys to unlocking godlike wrath. Even in the disciplined ranks of ancient Greece, the dance was not forgotten. Before stepping into the phalanx, hoplites performed the pirish, a ritualized war dance that blended athleticism with devotion. To the beat of the flute, they mimed attacks and parries, leaps and thrusts. It was both training and prayer, a tribute to Ares and Athena. Plato himself wrote of it as a noble art, a dance that taught both grace and readiness. In that rhythm, Greek warriors found poise amid terror, turning the chaos of battle into a choreographed expression of will. Across these distant worlds, the same rhythm echoed. Whether it was the drum, the chant, or the stomp of feet, each was a heartbeat of defiance. The dance united them, connected them to ancestors, and gave form to invisible strength. It was an ancient technology of the spirit, older than bronze or iron, a weapon against fear itself. What made these rituals so enduring was not superstition alone, but psychology long before psychology had a name. The act of synchronized movement releases chemicals that calm the body, align breathing, and heighten focus. Dancing together before battle created not just morale but an unspoken trust, one that turned scattered men into a single organism. In every stomp and shout, each warrior reminded himself, "I am not alone." And yet, beyond unity and courage, the dance carried something even deeper, a confrontation with death. To dance before battle was to look mortality in the eye and laugh. It was a human rebellion against the inevitability of loss, a declaration that even if the body should fall, the spirit would not tremble. The dance transformed fear into art, blood into rhythm, death into ritual. The camera lingers on the faces of warriors through time, painted Maori, chanting Zulu, roaring Norsemen, the calm determination of Greek hoplites. Different lands, different gods, but the same fire in the eyes. The narrator's voice softens, almost reverent. Across millennia, before the charge, before the clash, mankind has always danced. Not to celebrate war, but to prepare the soul for it. And so, when the drums stop and the war cries fade into silence, one question remains. Why did they truly dance? For glory? For gods? For courage? Or because, deep down, something ancient within us needs the rhythm before the storm, a heartbeat louder than fear itself? As the question hangs, the scene fades from the roar of battle back to the flicker of firelight. The narrator whispers, almost to the ancestors themselves, perhaps to understand why, we must return to where the first dances began, on the fields where faith met fear and rhythm met war. The next step in our journey takes us to the world's earliest warriors, where the line between prayer, performance, and preparation was first drawn. Before the shield walls locked and the spears met, the ancient world moved to a different kind of rhythm. In the lands of marble temples and bronze armor, warriors prepared not just with weapons, but with ritual. Long before the clash, before the scent of iron and dust, there were movements, chants, and prayers. From the sun-baked plains of Greece to the misty forests of Celtic Europe, warriors sought to bridge the gap between man and God. They believed that courage was not born in the heart alone. It had to be summoned, shaped, and tested through sacred performance. What we now call a war dance was, to them, the most serious of prayers. In the ancient Mediterranean, the Greeks were among the first to codify this union of rhythm and readiness. They called it the pirish, a war dance so important that even philosophers discussed it. Plato described it as a dance of grace and strength, designed to train the body and mind for combat. The pirish mimicked the movements of battle, thrusting, ducking, advancing, and was often performed during festivals to honor Ares, the god of war. But when the time for battle came, the dance took on a different meaning. Soldiers would gather before marching out, moving together to the music of the aulos, the haunting double flute that guided their steps. Each man's motion mirrored his comrades'. The result was not chaos but harmony, a rehearsal of unity that carried over into the disciplined phalanx. When those shields finally overlapped and the line advanced, their movements echoed the rhythm they had practiced. In that rhythm lay their strength. Further east, the Romans inherited and transformed the Greek idea, giving it the rigid order of an empire. Their version of the war dance, the saltatio armata, was both a spectacle and a ceremony. Young patricians known as the Salii, the leaping priests of Mars, performed it in full armor through the streets of Rome each March, the month sacred to the god of war. To the beat of drums and the clash of bronze shields, they sang hymns to Mars Gradivus, invoking him to walk with their legions. This ritual, centuries old even in the days of Caesar, was more than civic pageantry. It was Rome reminding itself that its power came from divine favor and disciplined unity. The soldiers who watched the Salii dance would later march to battle in step, their movements still guided by the cadence of drum and command, a militarized echo of the ancient dance. To the north and west, among the Celts of Gaul and the British Isles, the dance took a wilder, more visceral form. Ancient writers like Diodorus Siculus and Strabo recorded how Celtic warriors would sing, whirl, and beat their weapons before battle, their long hair flowing, their painted bodies glistening with sweat. To Roman eyes, it seemed barbaric, even insane. But to the Celts, it was a sacred frenzy, a way to awaken the numen, the spiritual energy of the body and the land. Archaeological finds, like carvings of leaping warriors on stone monuments and bronze figures locked in ecstatic poses, reveal that such dances were woven deep into their culture. The rhythm of the drum was not just noise, it was the heartbeat of the tribe. As they danced, they called upon gods like Camulos and Tutates, offering their fear as fuel to the divine. In the ancient Near East, where the civilizations of Mesopotamia and Anatolia flourished, dance also held a sacred place in the theater of war. Clay tablets speak of priests and warriors who danced to summon Ishtar, the goddess of both love and battle. Her temple rituals often blended sensuality and violence, mirroring the dual nature of war itself, creation through destruction. Babylonian reliefs show soldiers moving in formation behind musicians, the earliest evidence of a march or dance serving both ritual and military purposes. Each gesture, each step, was a coded plea for favor. To fight without invoking the gods was to risk chaos. To dance was to restore order. Across all these lands, the common thread was fear and the will to master it. Battle in the ancient world was intimate and brutal. A man could see his enemy's face, hear his breath, smell his sweat. There was no distant artillery, no safety in numbers. Every fight was personal. The dance before battle gave warriors a moment to confront that terror together. By moving in rhythm, they found balance. By chanting, they filled the silence of dread with the sound of purpose. Anthropologists today call this synchrony, a phenomenon known to increase trust and dissolve the boundaries between individuals. But the ancients didn't need a term for it, they felt its power. Each culture shaped the ritual to its own beliefs. The Greeks sought harmony between body and reason, the Romans discipline through divine duty, the Celts ecstasy and fearlessness through frenzy. Yet all shared the same goal, to transform ordinary men into instruments of fate. When the last drumbeat faded and the lines advanced, something inside them had shifted. They were no longer farmers, craftsmen, or sons. They were avatars of their gods, extensions of something eternal. As the centuries passed, these rituals evolved, but the essence remained, the dance as the final threshold between life and death. In that liminal space, warriors shed doubt and donned destiny. It was the ancient answer to a universal question: how does one face the unfaceable? And so the narrator's voice lowers, almost reflective, over the image of torchlight flickering on bronze armor. The sound of a flute fades, replaced by the beating of distant drums. The voice asks, were these dances truly for the gods, or for the men themselves? Perhaps they were both. For in the rhythm of their steps lay not only faith, but the oldest human instinct, to survive fear by transforming it into movement. As dawn breaks over a silent battlefield, the camera lingers on the still forms of shields and spears. The narration continues, carrying us forward. If in these early rituals warriors learned to master terror through rhythm, what would happen when men sought to become the very spirit of war itself? The next chapter unfolds where dance no longer invoked the gods, but sought to become them. The war dance was not merely a spectacle of motion. It was strategy, psychology, and spirituality intertwined. Before the clash of swords or the drawing of bows, warriors entered a state beyond fear, where the body became both weapon and instrument. Every tribe, every army, every civilization had its own rhythm of readiness. The Greeks called it Pyrrhish, the Romans had their saltatio armata, and in the islands of the Pacific, warriors stamped, shouted, and sang their identities into existence. These rituals were not primitive theater, they were ancient forms of psychological warfare, preparing the mind as much as the body. Among the Maori of New Zealand, the haka was more than intimidation, it was identity made flesh. Warriors of the Ngati Toa tribe would paint their faces, bare their chests, and perform with wide eyes and tongues extended, their movements synchronized with the pounding of feet and the chant of defiance. When British troops first encountered them in the 19th century, they mistook it for madness. In truth, it was mastery. The haka stripped away hesitation, binding the group into one breathing, shouting force. Each stomp declared, "We stand as one. We fear nothing." Across the world, in the northern forests of Scandinavia, Viking raiders prepared for battle with a different rhythm. Before their longships touched shore, berserkers entered trances through drumming, chanting, and rhythmic breathing. To outsiders, they seemed possessed. To their kin, they were chosen by Odin himself. The dance of the berserker was chaos incarnate, frenzied, violent, and unstoppable. But even here, in what seemed like madness, was rhythm. The repetition of motion and sound induced a unity of mind and muscle, transforming men into living weapons. In Africa, among the Dahomey Amazons, An all-female military elite of the 18th and 19th centuries, war dances carried both beauty and terror. Before battle, they performed with blades flashing in perfect synchronization, chanting praises to their queen. Observers describe their movements as hypnotic, every step balanced between elegance and death. The Dahomey warriors believed their dance connected them to their ancestors, who watched from beyond, lending them strength. Their rhythm was the heartbeat of generations, every stomp an invocation, every turn a promise of vengeance. Far to the east, samurai warriors of Japan found their own disciplined expression in the pre-battle bugaku, ritual movements set to slow, deliberate music. Unlike the wild dances of other cultures, this was serenity before slaughter. Precision replaced chaos. The samurai moved in perfect harmony, their bodies mirroring their inner calm. They believed the warrior's soul should be as still as water before it strikes. In this stillness, the dance became meditation, a means to banish fear, to merge thought and motion until only purpose remained. What all these rituals shared was the transformation of fear. The dance before battle was humanity's oldest method of facing death with dignity. Rhythm gave courage form, movement made belief visible. Through collective motion, individuals ceased to exist as isolated beings. They became a single organism of purpose. For the enemy watching, the effect was devastating. To see hundreds of warriors moving in perfect unity, chanting as one voice, was to glimpse something beyond human control. It struck at the spirit before the first weapon was raised. And that was the true power of these dances. They conquered fear on both sides. As empires rose and technology evolved, these ancient rituals began to fade. Gunpowder and formations replaced drums and chants. Yet even in silence, the rhythm endured. The dance before battle had taught humanity its most primal lesson. Courage is not born in stillness, but in motion. Before every clash, before every struggle, we move, not away from fear, but through it. The warriors stand in a circle, the air thick with dust and anticipation. Before the clash, the drumbeat begins, slow at first, then rising, pulsing through every chest. Across cultures, from Sparta to the Zulu plains, this was the heartbeat before chaos. The Greeks danced in armor, stamping the ground to drive out fear. The Zulu impi stamped their spears in unison, each movement rehearsing the kill. In every motion, rhythm transformed terror into focus. At dawn on the plains of Isandawana in 1879, the Zulu war dance reached its terrifying peak. Thousands of warriors, their bodies painted and voices raised, leapt in unison beneath the African sun. British officers watched, half in awe, half in dread, as the chants built like thunder. The earth shook beneath the synchronized steps of the impi. When the charge began, it felt less like men attacking and more like the land itself rising to devour. Rifles cracked and cannons roared, yet the Zulu rhythm never faltered. Even as men fell, they sang louder, their war cry echoing through smoke and blood. For one brief day, the ancient dance triumphed over modern steel. But at Ulundi months later, machine guns silenced the drum. The rhythm ended not in victory, but in remembrance. Still, even in defeat, the dance lived on, a ritual of courage, identity, and mourning. It became both preparation and prayer, both defiance and farewell. The Zulu warriors danced not just for triumph, but to remind the living who they were. And as the fires burned out, the rhythm lingered, carried on the wind like a heartbeat refusing to die. The empire's guns fell silent, but the old dances refused to vanish. Across the oceans, other warriors rose, some with hope, others with despair, and each turned once more to rhythm. In the 1890s American plains, the Lakota people found faith in the ghost dance, a ritual born from prophecy. If they danced long enough, they believed, their ancestors would return, the buffalo would roam again, and the white invaders would disappear. Circles of men, women, and children moved together beneath the cold sky, singing and turning until exhaustion blurred the world. To them, it was salvation. To the U.S. Army, it was rebellion. Fear twisted prayer into threat. In December 1890, at Wounded Knee, soldiers opened fire on unarmed dancers. Hundreds fell, still wearing the white ghost dance shirts they believed could stop bullets. Yet even amid slaughter, the dance continued. Survivors whispered that some still sang as they died, moving until their last breath. The rhythm that once summoned courage before war now became a song of endurance, defiance, and mourning. In Africa and the Pacific, echoes of these final dances persisted. The Samoan Shiva Tao returned in uprisings. Maori warriors performed the haka in protest and remembrance. These dances became languages of identity, movements that no empire could erase. Each step said the same thing: we are still here. The war dance had evolved from a tool of conquest into a statement of existence. It no longer prepared warriors for battle, it kept memory alive. Even in defeat, humanity found a way to move, to turn grief into rhythm, and rhythm into strength. The drums of war have faded, but the rhythm endures. Beneath the noise of modern life, we still move to the same ancient beat. The dance before battle may have vanished from the fields of war, but it survives in every march, every chant, every synchronized motion of courage. Science now reveals what the ancients always knew: rhythm unites. When people move together, fear dissolves. Heartbeats align. Soldiers march in cadence to steady their nerves. Athletes chant before a match to summon focus. The Maori haka, performed on rugby fields, is not mere spectacle, it is the echo of an ancient truth. Movement creates unity. Unity creates power. Even beyond war, the rhythm persists. Protesters chant in the streets, voices blending into one sound. Drummers lead processions through cities. Dancers raise their arms in remembrance of those lost. The body still remembers what words cannot express, that courage is born through motion. Perhaps the warriors of old understood something eternal. Their dances were never only about victory, they were ways to master fear, to transform chaos into control. Every stomp, every shout, every shared rhythm was a vow: we face the dark together. The narrator's voice softens as the camera fades to ancient circles of dancers beneath a red sky. They danced, it says, not to kill, but to remember. Not to win, but to endure. The drums fade to a single heartbeat, the first sound every human hears, the last to leave the world. The final words linger. The dance before battle was never just preparation. It was the battle itself. And though the drums have fallen silent, the rhythm still lives, inside us all.